Hello, friends, both old and new. I'm John St. Baptiste, and this is Music Makes the People Come Together, where we share amazing and eclectic music with amazing and eclectic people, much like yourselves. This is this week's playlist. As you can see, it's coming up on Tuesday. That's the new time that the playlist is going to be coming up. And this week's playlist, I'm pretty excited about. It was suggested to me by my very good friend, Johnny B. Crazy, who is my co-host of the Cylon Johns channel you can check out in the description down below. And he asked that I make a playlist of some punk rock music. So I decided, there are a lot of ways one can define punk, but I decided to go with the original description of what the genre means. And the majority of this is a bit older, but these are 10 of my favorite punk songs. So I hope you enjoy them. We're going to talk about them, do a bit of curation, and then I'll link you up to the playlist. So, starting off, for a lot of people, this is considered one of the most iconic punk songs of all time. It came out on my literal birthday, July 1st, 1977, and this is Pretty Vacant by the Sex Pistols. It's a song that I've just always loved. It's kind of funny that it came out on my birthday because I remember the first time I heard the opening notes on it, I just thought it was so great. The Sex Pistols, it's kind of interesting. This album, which is Nevermind the Bollocks, Here's the Sex Pistols. Because of the title of the album, and a lot of people in the British press found it offensive, even though it was charting, they just left a blank spot where the title should be, which I think is kind of funny. Another funny story about this is that Sid Vicious, who most people, if they're familiar with the Sex Pistols, will think of first when you bring them up, was so untalented that outside of the song Bodies on this album, he did not do any of the bass work. It was all done by Paul Jones, the guitarist. So I found that terribly, terribly amusing. Moving on, we have one of my favorite bands from the first time I saw them. They opened for the Ramones. I think it was back in '92 when I saw them. And this is Social Distortion doing Story of My Life. Awesome song. It goes in a very different direction. It's not... It's much more heartfelt, but I think I would still consider it punk rock, definitely. This is off their self-titled third album, and it's their live recording at Anaheim in 2003. And this is a cool album because it's really when they started getting that rockabilly sound that they add to their music. So I like how they combine kind of the two elements and made their own thing. I just think it is phenomenal and a great track. Third, we have How Can You Do a Punk List Without Them? The Ramones. And this is We're a Happy Family off of Rocket to Russia. Also came out in 1977. The Ramones, I always thought one of the things I really liked about them personally is that, yes, I would call this punk rock, but they were far less political and far more professional musically than a lot of their contemporaries. Also, it's interesting that Joey Ramone once said, we're not a punk rock band, we're a rock and roll band. And I think to an extent he was right, but so many punk bands have been influenced by them that I just kind of had to include that here. After that, we're going to the very opposite end of the spectrum. This is Propagandhi. And this is their track, The Only Good Fascist is a Dead Fascist. This is off their album Less Talk, More Rock, which came out in 1996. Interestingly enough, not the year I was born, but the year my son was born. And this is just a really cool track. It's pretty straightforward about their thoughts and feelings. And I do just have to say, I'm not going to be quite as vulgar as they are in the track. But if you are sexist, racist, homophobe, Nazi, Aryan Nation, white supremacist, do me a favor and just unsubscribe. Or click this video off, or give me a thumbs down. Shit, if you want to, that's fine. But yeah, this is a really awesome track, and I'm quite fond of it. Next, we have the band X, as in the letter. They were part of the LA punk scene back in the early 80s. And this is Johnny Hit and Run Pauline. It's a pretty cool track because it sounds at the beginning like a late 50s, early 60s, just rock and roll track. But if you pay attention to the lyrics, it's a lot more twisted. So I'll just leave that to you and let you think on that. This came out on their album Los Angeles, which came out in 1980. Interesting fact, Ray Manzarek, who was the keyboardist for The Doors, produced this. Now, I'm not personally a fan of The Doors, but I've always felt that their big redeeming grace was Ray Manzarek, and I think him being their production worker is pretty awesome. And I just love pretty much anything that John Doe and Exene Cervenka have ever done. Really good track. Next, we have the Misfits. Die, Die, My Darling. The Misfits are horror punk. Porter hunk, that would be funny. No, they're horror punk, and you know, this album, Earth AD, has actually, it came out, and then the single for this came out after the band broke up, but they also needed to make a little cash, right? So I always find that story amusing. Glenn Danzig went on to form first Samhain and then his band Danzig, which I personally like more, but I do love me some Misfits. It brings me back just great memories of high school and things like that, and this is just a really awesome track. Also, if you're a fan of the band, Metallica does an awesome cover of this. If you want, go to my playlists and you can find it in the Covers That Kick Ass playlist. So that's there, along with a lot of other really great covers. I hope you enjoy checking that out. Next, we have Holiday in Cambodia by the Dead Kennedys. This is off their album Fresh Fruit for Rotting Vegetables. And the message of this song, I think, is just great in this day and age. I think if you're a person with half a brain, you'll kind of see what he's saying. It's about these people who go off to school and, you know, think they really know what they're talking about, but they don't. And it's, you get the line, you'll work harder with a gun in your back for a bowl of rice a day. Well, if you look at the way Cambodia was at the time, you'll understand what he's talking about. And I've just always been a fan of the Dead Kennedys. I don't agree with all their political views. I don't agree with all their ideals. But I do totally 100% agree with what this song is saying. And I hope you enjoy checking it out. If you see what I'm doing, I'm trying to balance like what I consider like fun stuff with more socio-political stuff, because I think people need to understand that punk music hits both ends of the spectrum there. Next, we have The Clash doing I Fought the Law. This is off their first self-titled album, The Clash. And it was originally done by the Crickets. Interestingly enough, this was done by the Crickets after Buddy Holly died, on the day the music died. Let me know if you get that reference. But it is just, I mean, everyone and their mom has done a cover of this, but I love the Clash's cover, and I think it just really gives that feeling of that early, raw punk rock sound. So I hope you enjoy that. Following that, we have 7 Seconds. And this is Young Until I Die. This band were very big about their not using any drugs or chemicals or anything like that, which I'm sure if you watch any of the live streams I'm on or if you watch our other channel, you know I don't personally feel that way. But I respect it, and it's just a really cool song. This is off The Crew. You got to respect the fact that these guys stuffed 18 tracks into one LP. I mean, that's how fast they play. It's 18 songs in, I think, 35 minutes. It's nuts. But, you know, I just think it's a really cool track. And when I discovered this band in my teens, there's a certain point in time where I really liked them. I actually, just to make this list, revisited them for probably the first time in over 20 years. But good track. Check them out. Especially if you're into the whole straight edge mentality, you'll probably really like their stuff. Finally, we're going to end this at the beginning, because arguably this was the first punk band. In fact, everybody calls them proto-punk. This is the Motor City 5 doing Kick Out the Jams. And what's really cool, this is live in Detroit, the Motor City, back in 1970. The album came out in 1969, same name, Kick Out the Jams. And this is kind of where the whole sound started. And you got to think, this is back in 1969. There were so many censorship issues because this song literally starts out, "Kick out the jams, motherfuckers." But it's a great track, awesome stuff. And if you ever get the opportunity, Henry Rollins does a cover of it that I really like quite a bit. It was on the soundtrack to Pump Up the Volume, which is a movie that I really like quite a bit. So, there's your playlist for the week. I hope you enjoy yourself some punk. Obviously, since it's punk rock, it's not going to take you too long to listen to it. You can find that in the description down below. We're going to go to some trivia. Trivia question for last week. Unfortunately, nobody answered. Nobody gets their smooch. Nobody gets their special track. But I just smooch you all for coming to check this out. Now, the question was, the cover of Patti Smith's album, Horses, is iconic in music. And who took that photograph? And the answer is Robert Mapplethorpe. There was a huge scandal because of a few pictures of his when he did an exhibition in the city I live in, Cincinnati, Ohio. And even though they were in a completely separate room that you had to show an ID to get into to say you were 18, there was this huge scandal about it. But actually won a case in court, which is pretty awesome. By the way, if you're from Cincinnati or you know anything about it, Cincinnati, fuck you, Simon Lease. So that was last week's trivia. Nobody gets their smooch. Nobody gets their special track. If you'd like a smooch and a special track of your very own, then in the comment section down below, please answer this trivia question. Name 6 of the Ramones for me. If you can do that, you'll get your smooch. You'll also get your special track. So I'm going to let you enjoy that. Right before I go, I want to drop some shout outs to people who've always supported my channel, and I just want to go back and offer my support in return. AU Pack Mule, Lawrence Corner, our Red Sox fan, Indie Geek, Dog Sidious, and of course my co-host Johnny B. Crazy from the Cylon Johns, who came up with the whole idea for me to do this list. So I hope you enjoyed it, and Johnny, I really hope you enjoy it. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here, let you enjoy the music, which is in the description down below. Speaking of while you're down below, why don't you give it a like, hit that notification bell, share it with a friend, and in the meantime, please be excellent to one another and party on.